They say the Appalachian Hills remember every bad secret we've ever tried to bury in them. And after that night, I believe it. Our orders came down wrapped in the usual language: logistical anomaly, stolen government property, suspected theft of sensitive equipment. But there were tells baked into the briefing that anyone with more than one enlistment could read. No law enforcement liaison, no official case number, no mention of notifying state authorities. Just a set of coordinates in eastern Kentucky, a window of darkness between 10:00 and 50:00, and one handwritten line at the bottom of the tasking sheet: recover if possible. If not, confirm it cannot be recovered. That phrasing stuck like a splinter under the nail. We rolled out at 005, 2 hours, 3 vehicles, 2 up-armored Humvees and 1 LMTV loaded with a tow package and a generator that looked older than anyone riding with it. 8 of us total. I was team lead on the ground, active duty sergeant attached to a mixed guard detail, because I'd done recovery work before, and because no one else in that motor pool was dumb enough to volunteer for a no-paper-trail mission in coal country. The rain had turned from drizzle to a steady, needling curtain by the time we left the highway. The forest closed around us fast, branches arching overhead, forming that familiar tunnel of wet black that Appalachia wears at night. Our headlights caught the reflective eyes of deer once or twice, but mostly it was just mist and timber, and the relentless hiss of rubber on soaked pavement. The radio traffic from battalion faded behind us, until it was just the comforting crackle of our own convoy net and the low rumble of engines. Simple objective, on paper: track a stolen government test platform, a trailer-mounted experimental relay array signed out of a contractor facility 4 hours earlier by a captain who didn't exist. The GPS beacon had flared once, briefly, on a road that no longer showed on modern maps, then gone dark. Our job was to follow the last known route, verify the location, secure the asset if present. No imagery support, no ISR, no overhead. Budget cuts, someone joked. Nobody laughed. About 40 minutes in, the pavement gave way to patched asphalt, then to rough chip seal, then to something that felt like bone. Old roadbed laid before our parents were born. The trees leaned closer. Fog gathered low, thinning our world to twin beams ahead of the lead truck. I watched the mile markers vanish. The new ones were hand-painted, white on rotting wood, numbers that meant nothing to any grid I knew. I kept my eyes on the compass clipped to the dash, more out of habit than necessity. North drifted 3 degrees, then 6, then spun lazily like it was drunk. Could be the generator and back. Vargas, our EOD tech, said over the net, trying to sound casual. Old coils kick out garbage sometimes. I let him have that explanation for a few miles. We turned onto a narrow side road marked only by a leaning sign, swallowed in vines. For a second, the headlights cleared it enough for us to read the faded print. WY3 Wythe F access. Not a town, not a road. Maintenance road, maybe. The GPS unit on my lap, already glitching, blinked once and displayed a single coordinate set in red. The same one from the stolen platform's last ping, then froze solid. No error message, no recalculation, just numbers, locked like judgment. I logged them by hand in my notebook. As we pressed deeper, the radio started its first trick, a short burst of static, then a clean double click, mic key with no voice on the other end. I checked our push to talk. Last transmission, say again, nothing. Second Humvee reported nothing. LMTV reported nothing. We chalked it up to moisture, shared interference. But I recognized the pattern. It was the same cadence comms guys used when they tested a line. Intentional. The smell hit not long after. Wet earth, rust. That old coal stink you get near abandoned mine cuts, mixed with something electrical, like hot dust burned off a transformer. The trees thinned, and the road spat us out into a bowl-shaped clearing ringed by shattered ridges and rusted power pylons that climbed the slopes like skeletal scars. At the far edge of the clearing stood a chain-link fence sagging under its own age, a blown-out guard shack, and beyond that, half-eaten by fog, the silhouette of low concrete structures built into the hillside. No signage, no flags, no U.S. government property warnings, just bare utilitarian slabs, the kind of architecture you get when the mission isn't to be seen. Looks like an old relay or radar site, Haynes muttered beside me.
Yeah, I said.
Except it's not on any book we've ever seen. We dismounted. Boots sank into mud that shouldn't have been that soft this high up. The fence gate hung open, its chain coiled neatly on a hook, inviting without welcome. I ordered weapons slung but ready, white lights only, No NVGs yet. The air beyond the fence felt thicker, not colder at first, just heavy, like walking into a room where someone had been arguing a second before. Our LMTV stayed idling near the entrance, generator quiet for now. As we approached the first structure, a squat concrete block with a recessed steel door, the radios cut again. This time, not static, a tone. High, sharp, then dropping low, like someone dragging a finger down piano wire in slow motion. It vibrated through my teeth. All three vehicle sets in our handheld screamed it simultaneously, then cut to dead silence. "Kill your nets," I ordered. We did. No change. The silence after was worse. I tried the door. It was unlocked. Hinges stiff but functional. That was wrong. Abandoned places choose one. Rusted shut or kicked open. This felt maintained. I pushed it inward and a breath of air rolled out. Cold, dry, metallic, faintly ozone-scented like server rooms in thunderstorms. The interior lights were on. Dim, amber-tinted fixtures buzzing along a corridor that sloped gently down into the hill. To our left, just inside, sat a gray metal console with a dead CRT screen and an old rotary switch labeled in worn black stencils. Grid, local, hold. Vargas ran a gloved hand across it. "This stuff is 70s tech at best," he said. "Maybe early 80s. Why's it got fresh dust patterns?" He was right. There were clean arcs where something had been moved recently. Cables trailed along the wall, disappearing into conduits too new for the rest of the build. "We're in 5-minute recon," I said. "No hero shit. If it looks unstable, we back out and call it in." We moved. The hum started on our third step. Not from the fixtures, not from our gear. It came up through the soles of my boots. A deep, slow pulse, like a giant heart buried under concrete. Every few seconds it hit, resonating in my sternum, then faded, then hit again. Haynes cleared his throat. "You feel that? Keep moving," I said, because if I acknowledged it, it became real. The corridor opened into a larger operations room lined with dead racks and skeletic frames where equipment had once lived. In the center, bolted to the floor, was the only active thing in sight, a cylindrical housing the size of a man, cables feeding into it from all directions. Its surface matte black, except for a single small display showing a looping series of numbers. Not time, not coordinates, sequences. They cycled too fast to read, then snapped abruptly to one static line as we stepped closer. 02:37:16. I checked my watch. 01:14 local. Bishop checked his. Same. Command time in his logbook. Same. We stood there, listening to that buried heartbeat hum, watching a machine in a dead facility tell us a time we hadn't reached yet. I should have ordered us out right then. Instead, I took one more step toward it. The overhead lights flickered, and for a fraction of a second the room wasn't empty. Men in Cold War-era uniforms stood at the consoles, frozen mid-motion, faces bored like bad reception. Then the lights steadied, and we were alone again. "Sergeant," Haynes whispered. "What did you just see?" I swallowed. "Nothing. We're done. We mark this and we go." On my way out, I glanced at the display one last time. The numbers had changed. 02:37:16. Same timestamp. But beneath it now, cycling slowly, were letters that hadn't been there before. WY3. Old. I didn't know what it meant, but the hum under our feet was getting stronger. And when we stepped back outside, the LMTV wasn't where we'd left it. The tire tracks were. The idling engine wasn't. The clearing was the same shape, the pylons the same rusted bones. But the truck, and the two men we'd left with it, had vanished, like someone had edited them out of the frame. We formed a perimeter around the clearing, because that was all training had left to offer us. Control the space, control the fear. The fog pressed in like a living thing, curling around our boots, swallowing edges, until even the tree line felt closer than it should have been. The tire tracks from the LMTV ran 30 feet, then simply stopped, like someone had lifted the vehicle out of the world instead of driving it away. No drag marks, no disturbed mud, just two parallel scars leading nowhere. I kept counting heads, waiting for someone to make a bad joke, to relieve the tension the way soldiers do, but nobody spoke. Even Vargas had gone quiet, crouched low and staring at the tracks with a kind of scientific disbelief that had nowhere to land. Could they have rolled it back? Haynes asked finally. His voice carried that brittle edge of someone asking because silence had become too loud. "Not on this incline," I said, "and not without leaving a trace." I glanced at my watch again. 01:22, same as before. The seconds hand had frozen, twitching slightly as if trying to move but caught in invisible glue. I tapped the glass. Nothing. Around us, the pylons hung faintly, though the lines overhead were long dead. That hum matched the one beneath our boots, sinking rhythm like it had found a heartbeat of its own. Maybe the generator, Vargas muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. We circled the site, checking for any sign of the missing men. Their footprints stopped near the idling point. No return path, no scatter pattern, just ended mid-stride, like their bodies had been peeled away from reality. The only thing left was the smell of diesel and that faint ozone tang bleeding from the open door behind us. I keyed my radio, half knowing what would happen. Unit 2, respond. Static. Then, after a full 5 seconds, a double-click reply. No voice, just acknowledgement. My blood went cold. I keyed again. Unit 2, confirm your location. Another double-click. Identical rhythm. That's them, Haynes said. Too fast, too hopeful. I shook my head. No, that's a recording. I couldn't explain how I knew, but it felt wrong. Too precise, too delayed, like the response was replaying something we hadn't said yet. The hum rose another octave, pressing against our ears, making the air vibrate in our lungs. Vargas stepped toward the structure again, hand raised to his headset. Sir, we're picking up frequency bleed, not comms, power source. It's broadcasting on multiple bands, HF, VHF, and, he frowned, adjusting the knob, something else. Not even megahertz, subharmonics, like seismic noise translated to sound. Shut it down, I ordered. Kill the breaker, yank the feed, whatever it takes. He moved to obey, tracing the cables back toward the interior. The fog followed him in, spilling low across the threshold like smoke searching for an exit. I stayed outside, scanning the perimeter. The forest was changing shape. The ridges that had ringed us looked steeper, closer together, their outlines warped by the mist. It was subtle at first, angles where there hadn't been, shadows that didn't match the light. But the more I looked, the more wrong it became, like someone was redrawing the world while we stood inside it. Then came the flash. Not light exactly, more like the air turned reflective for a split second. A mirror ripple across the clearing. My stomach dropped, equilibrium gone. The hum peaked into silence. Vargas shouted from inside, voice cutting off mid-word. I rushed to the door. He was gone. No sign of him. The cables he'd been tracing now hung loose, their ends fused into the wall like they'd melted into the concrete. A thin line of frost crept along the floor where he'd been kneeling. Haynes grabbed my shoulder. Sarge, look. I turned back toward the clearing. The pylons were glowing faintly along their lengths, each one pulsing in sequence, up the metal frames like a wave crawling skyward. The clouds above responded. Slow rotation, a circular motion centered directly above us. I'd seen tornado formations, lightning anomalies, even flares caught in thermal inversion layers, but this was none of that. The rotation wasn't in the air, it was in perception. The stars themselves were bending, turning around a center that wasn't in the sky but somewhere underground. I forced my focus back to the here and now. Mount up, I ordered. We're pulling out, now. But the path we'd driven in on was gone. Where the road had been, there was only forest, unbroken and dense. No tire marks, no mud, no memory of our entry. The trees were wrong too. Wrong spacing, wrong type. Pine instead of oak. Younger, greener, dripping with dew, even though the rain had stopped. Haynes swore softly, crossing himself like a man reverting to instinct. It's the same clearing, he whispered, but it's not the same night. I didn't answer. Words felt useless. My radio crackled again. This time it wasn't static, it was a voice. Mine. Sergeant Miller to all units, it said. Calm, clipped, unmistakably me. Maintain hold perimeter. Do not breach inner structure. Then silence. My hand shook as I stared at the handset. I hadn't said that. I hadn't even thought it. The timestamp on the log display showed 02:37:16, the same time we'd seen on the black device. Inside, I dropped the radio like it had burned me. We're leaving, I said, louder than I meant to. I don't care how. We find slope, follow it down until we hit real ground. Move. We started walking, weapons slung, flashlights cutting weak cones through fog that shifted ahead like something alive. Every 100 feet, the terrain rearranged, ridges folding inward, creek beds appearing and vanishing, even the smell changing from rain-soaked pine to raw iron. The compass spun uselessly in my hand. I used my own breath to count distance, marking each exhale as a step away from whatever we'd awakened. After 10 minutes, maybe 20, the fog thinned. Trees broke apart, revealing a small clearing lit by an unnatural glow. amber and pulsing, bleeding from beneath the soil like the earth itself was backlit. In the center, half buried, lay the LMTV. It was upside down, cab crushed inward, frame bent like foil. But it was the same truck, same serial plate, same stenciled ID. Only one thing was different. The metal wasn't cold. It radiated faint warmth, like a body just past life. Inside, through the shattered windshield, I could see Vargas and the driver. They weren't burned, weren't broken, just frozen mid-motion, eyes open, skin pale and waxen, as if they turned to porcelain. The hum returned, louder than ever, shaking the leaves from the branches, and under it, buried deep within the sound, was a rhythm I recognized, the steady tick of a clock, counting down from 0, 2:37, 16. I'd seen death before, too much of it, but nothing prepares you for seeing men you spoke to an hour ago sitting there like waxwork mannequins in the middle of nowhere, their skin smooth and their eyes open and glossy as glass. Vargas looked peaceful, which somehow made it worse. Haynes moved first, slow, crouching by the LMTV's cab. His breath fogged the windshield and stayed there, thick and unmoving, like even the air refused to circulate around the wreck. "They're warm," he whispered, pressing 2 fingers against Vargas's neck. No pulse, but warm. That word hung in the air. Warm. Impossible. My body reacted before my mind did. Rifle up, scanning the tree line, the soil, the fog that never seemed to thin. The hum beneath the ground pulsed once, twice, a long pause. Then again, sinking with the light bleeding under the soil. I forced myself to breathe steady. Fear is contagious. A leader panics and the rest crumble. But the forest wasn't letting me think straight. The shapes between the trees were changing, weaning in subtle ways that felt wrong. The world had lost its geometry, lines bending, edges folding in ways that mocked logic. "Back off the vehicle," I ordered. "We mark it, we don't touch it." Haynes nodded, stepping away. His shadow stretched unnaturally long across the clearing, flickering like a second version of him trying to detach. I ignored it and pulled out my field notebook, the paper damp but usable. I logged coordinates by hand again, except the numbers didn't make sense. Latitude too high, longitude overlapping negative values. It was as if we were standing in 2 positions at once. I scribbled anyway, because that's what procedure demanded. Now, I say that's when the radio came alive again. Not static this time, not my voice, but theirs.
Vargas first, faint, tinny, like an old recording played through layers of dust. "Sergeant, do you copy?" He sounded calm, aware, as if he were still crouched at the console inside that bunker. I froze. The others heard it too. Haynes took a step closer. "That's him," he breathed. I keyed my mic. "Vargas, this is Miller. We've got eyes on you. You're down. Do you hear me?" Silence. Then his reply. Identical tone, identical pacing. "Sergeant, do you copy?" A loop. No delay variation. No interference. A recording triggered by proximity. Only it was speaking in real time. I looked at the LMTV's dash. The radio there was still on, faint red glow, pulsing with the same hum beneath our feet. The realization sank in cold. Whatever had pulled those men apart had also copied them, left their echoes behind like phonographs, spinning endlessly in a room no one could leave. The forest swayed again, not the wind, but a shift, like the entire world took one breath inward. That was when Haynes pointed toward the ridge. "Sarge, look, high above, on the slope, the pylons were moving."
They hadn't just changed color this time. They were rearranging, twisting slowly, their metal frames folding inward and reforming like antennae searching for a signal. One of them leaned forward and locked into place, its arms pointing directly at our clearing. "We're in a grid," I muttered. "Whatever this site was, we're inside its field." Haynes looked at me, eyes wide. "You think this is man-made?" "Everything starts that way," I said, though I wasn't sure anymore. The ground vibrated again, harder this time, and the hum broke into layers, frequencies rising, overlapping, merging into something that almost resembled speech. I couldn't make out words, but the rhythm was human, syllabic, intelligent. I shouted over it, "We move now." We turned toward the opposite ridge, the one that sloped down toward where the road should have been. The fog thickened instantly, solidifying into walls of gray that pressed on us like wet cement. I reached out, hand vanishing into it, the edges shimmering with faint static. "Thermal?" I asked. Haynes flicked his monocle on, cursed. "It's cold. Absolute zero cold. No return signatures. It's like the fog is eating heat." My ears popped. a shift in pressure so abrupt it made me stagger. When I straightened, the clearing was gone. The LMTV was gone. The pylons were gone. Even the slope behind us had dissolved into colorless emptiness. Just me, Haynes, and a world that no longer had horizon. "Stay close," I said, though my voice sounded muffled, trapped inside something soft. We walked, or at least tried to. The ground wasn't consistent anymore. Solid one step, liquid the next, as if the terrain was cycling between versions of itself faster than our senses could process. Shapes flickered ahead, trees, structures, then nothing. Once, I saw a corridor of concrete walls appear 10 feet in front of me and vanish before we reached it. Haynes was shaking his head. "We're looping. Same direction, same number of steps." He pointed at a fallen branch marked by a cut in its bark. "That's ours. I marked it 10 minutes ago." My throat tightened. "Time's not holding," I said quietly. "Whatever the hell they built here, it's not a machine, it's a fracture." We stopped, out of breath, the hum now like a living thing circling us, moving through soil and air alike. Then, faintly, a light appeared ahead, warm, steady, the same amber tone as the bunker lamps. We didn't discuss it, we just moved. The fog parted around it, revealing a building, not the bunker, but a house. 2 stories, wood siding gray with age, porch collapsed but windows intact. It looked real, tangible, and possibly out of place in a field of nothing. Haynes whispered, "You seeing this?" I nodded, hand on my rifle. "We need shelter," I said, though every part of me screamed otherwise. The door opened before we reached it. No wind, no hinges, just opened. Inside, the air was still, heavy with that ozone and dust smell again. The walls were covered in papers, maps, blueprints, handwritten notes pinned in uneven rows. I stepped closer. Every page showed the same thing. Grid coordinates spiraling outward from a single point labeled WITH line nod 0. Underneath, in red pencil, a phrase repeated dozens of times. "The clock is not a clock." My stomach turned. Behind us, the door shut on its own. Haynes spun, weapon up, but the sound died before it reached his ears. Then we heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, too heavy to be human. A shadow passed over the ceiling, and the hum dimmed into silence, like whatever walked above us had become the center of its pulse. "Sarge," Haynes whispered, voice breaking. "We're not in its world anymore." I didn't answer, because I finally understood what the numbers on that device meant. 02:37:16 wasn't a time, it was a reset, and we were standing inside its heartbeat, waiting for the next cycle to begin. The steps above us moved slow, deliberate, each one bending the ceiling joist just enough to make the light fixture sway. There was no rhythm, just a pattern that almost became one, like someone testing how time worked under their feet. Haynes' rifle barrel trembled as he tracked the movement, the beam of his tack light shaking across the ceiling. I motioned him down, mouthing, "Wait." He swallowed, nodded. The hum had gone from vibration to silence, and silence in a place like that was worse than noise. It meant the world was holding its breath. The last step came to a stop directly above us. Dust sifted down, spiraling through the stale air like ash. My hand hovered near the trigger, but I didn't move. Something about the air changed. The pressure pulling inward as though the thing upstairs was drawing everything, even thought, toward it. Then, softly, the boards creaked again, retreating, step by step, until the sound faded entirely. Haynes exhaled shakily. "It's gone," he whispered, but the lie hung too heavy to believe. I looked back at the wall of maps. The red markings had shifted. The spiral wasn't static anymore. It was moving, curling tighter around the center. A slow rotation I could see with my own eyes. Each rotation brought the numbers closer to a single coordinate. 3, 7.162, N, 8, 2.513 W. I didn't need a GPS to know that was where we were standing. "It's mapping us," I muttered. Haynes leaned in, staring. "No, Sarge, it's drawing us." And he was right. One of the lines extended off the page, thin and perfect, etched directly into the drywall. The ink wasn't ink at all. It was wet metal, mercury-like, glistening as it crawled upward toward the ceiling. I grabbed Haynes by the collar and pulled him back. "We're leaving." I barely got the words out before the lights blew, every bulb shattering in sequence like a row of rifle shots. The house plunged into darkness, save for a faint glow filtering down from upstairs, a warm amber pulse that flashed once every few seconds. It wasn't light from a lamp, it was something alive, like the rhythm of a beacon synced with a pulse. Haynes was breathing hard, whispering, "We can't go out there, it'll follow the sound." I ignored him, found the edge of the window frame, and pried open the nearest curtain. What I saw made no sense. The forest outside was gone. In its place stood a valley of concrete, massive circular slabs connected by trenches and metallic conduits that disappeared into a horizon that shouldn't exist. It wasn't Appalachia anymore. It was an infrastructure buried beneath it, an underground city built for machines, not men. The pylons from before were visible again, but inverted, their frames extending down from the sky as though we were now beneath their reflection. My stomach dropped with the realization. We hadn't moved through space. We'd been folded through the same coordinates, dropped between layers of something that used to overlap but no longer aligned. "We're under it," I said quietly. "Under what?" Haynes asked. "The experiment," I answered. "Whatever the hell Site line was testing, we're standing inside its echo." The glow from upstairs brightened, casting long bars of light across the floor. It pulsed again, once, twice, then stopped. The boards above groaned like something heavy had shifted its weight. Haynes took a step back, his voice a raw whisper. "Sarge, it's coming back." I aimed at the stairwell, flashlight trembling as I swept the beam up the steps. The light didn't travel far, 5,006 feet at most, before it dissolved into haze. Then faintly, a hand appeared on the banister. It wasn't flesh, it was translucent, filled with slow-moving light like molten amber. The fingers flexed once, then gripped the wood tight enough to make it crack. A figure followed, humanoid in shape, wrong in proportion, shoulders too narrow, head too long. Its face glowed faintly, not from features, but from light seeping through thin skin. The same color as the digits on the black cylinder back in the bunker. Every part of it moved in delayed frames, like watching a film reel catch and restart mid-second. It stepped down, one slow motion at a time, each impact syncing perfectly with that unending number, 023716, beating inside my skull. Haynes fired first. The muzzle flash blinded the room, the sound tearing through the quiet like a scream. The creature didn't flinch. The rounds hit and vanished, dissolving into sparks mid-air. The hum returned, deafening, climbing in pitch until the walls themselves began to vibrate. I grabbed Haynes and dragged him toward the back of the house. The thing accelerated, one moment halfway down the stairs, the next at the bottom, light flaring through its chest as it reached out. I caught the briefest glimpse inside it, gears, wires, motion frozen and alive at once. It wasn't a ghost, it was a recording wearing a body. The moment its hand brushed the wall, everything inverted, sound flipped inside out, light imploded, and we were thrown backward through the doorway. I hit ground hard, my ears ringing, my eyes flooded with afterimage. When I looked up, the house was gone. We were back in the clearing. The fog had lifted, stars visible again, but none of them were right. The constellations were reversed, mirrored like the world had spun itself backward. Haynes was gasping, crawling on all fours, his skin glowing faintly under his collar where sweat met air. "It's in us," he rasped. "It's marking us." I pulled him upright, slapping his face to keep him focused. "Move, we follow the ridge. There has to be an exit." He nodded weakly, and we started climbing, each step heavier than the last. The hum stayed constant now, steady and distant, like a motor buried deep below. Every few seconds, the world blinked, literally blinked, the stars flickering, the shadows shifting direction. I realized then what was happening. We weren't seeing time pass. We were trapped between its frames. White 9 hadn't been a communication project. It was an attempt to transmit through time, to anchor a signal beyond linear flow. And the experiment had succeeded. Only nothing that succeeded here had ever been meant for retrieval. When we reached the top of the ridge, dawn should have been rising. Instead, the sky hung black and white, like an overexposed photograph of morning. Below us, the clearing stretched endlessly in both directions, repeating itself like a mirror corridor. In each reflection, I saw two figures, us, moving in sync, a heartbeat out of time. I could see our mouths moving, but the words were always late, always slightly wrong. Haynes stared, mouth open, whispering, "We're still down there." I looked back, gripping my rifle, and said the only thing that made sense, "Not yet," because the clock wasn't done. 023716 blinked across the stars above us, massive, inverted, shimmering like a verdict hanging over a world that refused to end. The ridge broke underfoot like brittle glass, the soil shifting into gray shards that crunched without sound. For a moment I thought we were finally descending, that maybe we'd found the edge of whatever loop held us. But then I realized the ground wasn't sloping down at all. It was folding, bending upward around us, closing like a jaw. The horizon no longer existed. The world had become a bowl, and we were its center. Haynes staggered beside me, breathing in harsh bursts, his face slick with sweat that glowed faintly in the half-light. The same amber hue that pulsed inside the entity's chest now leaped from his pores, veins lit like molten wire. "Sarge," he choked out. "It's inside." He dropped to one knee, clutching his head, teeth gritted against something I couldn't see. The hum returned, this time no longer underground, but everywhere, within air, bone, blood. I could feel it speaking without words, not as sound but as comprehension. Hold point reached. Synchronization initiated. I pulled Haynes upright, half dragging him across the ridge until the ground flattened again. My vision flickered, frames missing, colors inverted, as if I were blinking through different versions of reality every second. Behind us, the clearing stretched infinite, repeating its own geometry like an unfinished thought. I caught glimpses of movement in each mirrored layer, shadows of us, moving in sequences just out of sync. One version of me knelt beside a body that wasn't there yet. Another fired his rifle into empty air. I stopped looking. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed in the mist, not gold this time, but a pale blue shimmer. It was cold, sterile, different from everything else. I knew instinctively it was the source, the machine's heart. "Come on," I said, forcing my voice steady. Haynes stumbled forward, eyes half-focused, mumbling numbers. 3s, 7s, 16s, like he was reciting coordinates burned into his mind. The closer we got, the colder it became. Frost spread across the ground, forming patterns like circuitry under ice. At the center stood a column of metal, taller than a man, smooth and seamless, humming at a frequency that vibrated in the chest instead of the ears. Symbols carved across its surface shifted constantly, letters turning to numbers, numbers into shapes. Every few seconds it flashed, 0 to 3716. Always that time, always that reminder. I stepped closer, reaching for the surface before I could stop myself. The metal was warm, almost alive, and when my glove brushed it, the world went silent. My vision filled with flashes, soldiers building the structure, engineers wiring circuits beneath it, generals watching through glass. Then came images of them vanishing, their bodies stretching into light, dissolving mid-breath as the machine activated for the first time. I saw the moment Fi. A pulse spread outward, a wave not of energy, but of chronology, bending every clock within 100 miles into synchronization with an event that had no place in linear time. The experiment hadn't failed, it had succeeded too well, and we had walked straight into its residue. I stumbled back, gasping, and the hum followed me, whispering through my skull like 1,000 radio frequencies overlapping into meaning. "You were always here." I turned toward Haynes. He was standing too still, head tilted upward, eyes unfocused, mouth moving in perfect sync with the machine's pulse. "Haynes!" I shouted, grabbing him by the vest. He looked at me and smiled faintly, blood dripping from his nose in a thin, steady line. "I can see it now," he murmured. "We didn't find it, Sarge. It found us." His body convulsed once, twice, then went limp in my arms, collapsing like a marionette cut from its strings. I laid him down gently, checking for breath. None. The glow beneath his skin faded, replaced by a dull gray sheen that looked more like metal than flesh. The hum peaked again. The column flared bright enough to sear the air, and suddenly everything shifted. Sky, ground, even gravity itself. I wasn't standing anymore. I was falling upward through layers of images. The bunker, the house, the valley, all stacked like film reels spinning backward through a projector. And each layer I saw versions of us. Haynes, Vargas, me, looping through the same path, the same orders, the same discovery. Some broke, some vanished, some just stood frozen mid-motion. The machine wasn't a transmitter, it was a recorder. Every attempt to shut it down became another entry, another iteration sealed into its cycle. Wife with Line wasn't built to communicate through time. It was built to preserve moments, to capture them endlessly, like insects trapped in amber. We had become one of its recordings, our presence etched into a reality that would replay until the system burned itself out. The light dimmed, and I hit ground hard. I was back on the ridge, alone. Haynes was gone. The sky above showed no stars, only the faint outline of the number suspended in the dark, 023716, flashing like a heartbeat waiting to reset. I should have felt fear, but what came instead was understanding. We hadn't stumbled into a haunted machine. We'd stepped into the archive of our own disappearance, and every second we spent inside was one the system had already written. I raised my head toward the silent hills and whispered, "Then let it finish." Because there was no way out of something that already remembered you. I don't remember standing up, but I remember the sound, the low electric hum that had become the pulse of everything. It wasn't just beneath me now, it was inside me, resonating in ribs and marrow, setting every nerve alight, like copper wire fed by unseen current. The ridge stretched endlessly ahead, its edges flickering like bad film, folding into itself again and again. Every step I took echoed twice, the real sound and its delayed twin, like time couldn't decide which version of me belonged here. I called out for Haynes, for Vargas, for anyone, but the forest only answered in that same metallic breath. The air shimmered faintly with a light that had no source. My watch was dead, but the number was still there, burned into my sight even when I closed my eyes. 023716. Not counting up, not counting down, just waiting. I walked until the ridge flattened into another clearing. The fog was thinner here, and for the first time I could see structures. More of those concrete bunkers, dozens of them, all identical, arranged in a perfect circle. Each had the same steel door, the same single light above it, and each door stood half open, breathing out faint vapor that rolled like smoke across the ground. In the center of that circle stood another column, taller, darker, its surface cracked with faint blue lines like veins through obsidian. I didn't need to touch it to know it was the core. The air bent around it, distorting light, warping distance. My radio crackled again, faint but alive. I froze. "Miller, do you copy?" The voice was sharp, clear, too normal. It was command. My chest clenched. I raised the mic. "This is Sergeant Miller. I read you. Do you have my coordinates?" "Affirmative. We've got your transponder, but you're way off your original grid. What happened?" I hesitated. The words wouldn't fit through my throat. Experiment site. Active equipment. Casualties. Silence. Then, say again. "The facility was decommissioned in 1972. My blood ran cold. "Negative," I said. "We entered it tonight. I had visual confirmation." Another pause. Then the voice came back, lower now. "Careful. Sergeant, there's no one authorized in that sector. You're not supposed to be there. Stay where you are. We'll dispatch recovery." I opened my mouth to answer, but the hum rose sharply, cutting through the signal. The voice dissolved into static, then into something else. Another voice layered underneath it. My own. "Do not wait," it said. "They never make it in time." The radio went dead. I stood there, staring at it, the metal casing vibrating faintly in my hand. The circle of bunkers began to glow, one by one, each door spilling out that same blue light. It wasn't random, it was counting. 1 clockwise, 2, 3, until the pulse completed the circle and returned to the column at the center. The hum deepened, no longer a sound but a force pressing against my chest. I could feel it aligning with my heartbeat, syncing perfectly. The ground shifted, and a wave of static rolled outward through the fog, distorting everything it touched. For a moment, I saw them. Haynes, Vargas, even the 2 missing drivers, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching. Their outlines wavered, as if made of radio interference. They weren't ghosts, they were signals. I stumbled forward shouting their names, but they didn't move. They were looking past me, toward the column. That was when I noticed the shape within it. A figure suspended inside the light, arms outstretched, face obscured, its body flickering like film caught between frames. It wasn't one person, it was hundreds, thousands, overlaid, every failed cycle compressed into one image. Every team that had come here, every voice that had called for extraction, all of them preserved, synchronized, stored inside the frequency. The hum built to a scream. The ground liquefied beneath me, rippling like water. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, as the air filled with whispers. Some were English, some weren't, all of them saying the same thing in their own way. Hold point, synchronize, return to origin. The light erupted, a shockwave of brilliance that erased the world in an instant. When it cleared, I was standing again, back in the first clearing. The pylons loomed where they had been that first night, the mud black and wet beneath my boots. The trucks were there too, silent, empty, doors open. My team's footprints surrounded me, leading into the bunker. The gate was half closed, chain coiled neatly on the hook. The same scene, exactly as it had been before. But I knew better now. The stars above were wrong again. Slightly dimmer, slightly rearranged. I looked down at my reflection in a puddle near my feet. My eyes glowed faint amber. The hum quieted, resting just beneath my heartbeat, and I realized the truth. The machine had reset, but it hadn't released me. I was its new echo, the next voice in the loop. And somewhere beyond the fog, a new convoy was already on its way, answering the same orders, driving toward the same coordinates, believing the same lie, that they were the first to find the lifeline. The next time I heard engines, I didn't move. I stood in the clearing exactly where the hum wanted me, watching headlights bleed through fog that wasn't fog anymore. It was memory, reshaping itself for the next arrival. I knew what I'd see before it came. 3 vehicles, 2 Humvees, 1 LMTV, the same as before, same markings, same sequence. I could hear their radio chatter echoing faintly in my skull before their real voices caught up, each word a repeat of something I'd already lived. Bravo 47 en route, one said. My own voice, younger by seconds or lifetimes, I couldn't tell. The sight of those trucks emerging from the mist made something deep in me fracture, like I was watching my own ghost drive into the grave I'd dug. The hum grew louder, a heartbeat syncing with mine. The sky flickered between black and gray, the stars pulsing like static trapped in film grain. I took a step forward, then another, mud sucking at my boots. The convoy slowed, light sweeping across the clearing, illuminating the wreck that wasn't there yet. The first Humvee stopped a few yards away. I saw movement inside, the silhouette of a man leaning toward the windshield, flashlight raised. My flashlight, my posture, my reflection pretending to be someone else. I wanted to shout to warn them, but sound didn't belong to me anymore. I'm ready to read the police club. I built the trail. It came out as distortion, a low electric warble that made the air ripple. They didn't hear. They were already stepping out exactly as we had done. One of them, Haynes, moved to the wreckage's edge. His breath far, don't think you were too sorries of any of them. One of them didn't rush into the world. I watched it all replay, line by line, like the world had been taped over itself and is now burning. The column at the center of the clearing began to glow faintly again, the number appearing across its surface, 02:37:16. That fixed second, the moment where everything folds back, I finally understood. This wasn't a machine that broke time. It was time trying to fix what the machine had done. Each loop was an act of correction, a desperate repair that never finished. The white line wasn't cursed. It was stuck mid-reset, forever erasing and redrawing the same night, searching for an ending it could survive. I moved closer to the new team, stepping through their beams of light, and they didn't react. Their eyes slid past me like I wasn't part of their world anymore. Maybe I wasn't. When I looked down, my hands were faint outlines, light passing through veins that pulsed amber with every beat of that buried hum. I wasn't a man standing in the cold anymore. I was part of the circuit, data written into the repeating pattern. Yet something in me resisted. The memory of command training, of human instinct, of survival. It flickered like static behind my eyes. If every loop ended the same way, maybe I could alter the frame before it closed. I moved toward the truck, toward myself, watching my younger body lean into the radio, calling command for confirmation. I wanted to stop me, but the moment my hand touched the door, reality convulsed. The headlights fractured into 1,000 white shards, the air vibrating so violently, it flattened sound into silence. The younger me turned, eyes wide, flashlight beam cutting straight through my chest without resistance. And for one impossible second, he saw me. Recognition flickered in his expression, a small, horrified understanding. Then the hum roared like thunder, swallowing everything. The clearing disintegrated, light bled sideways, and I was back inside the bunker again. The console screens lit up one by one, displays reading grid reset, sequencing initialized. The black cylinder pulsed in rhythm with my heart, data spilling across its face in endless columns. I saw thousands of names flashing by, every soldier, every scientist, every unit designation tied to white line operations. All gone, all preserved. The machine was cataloging them, filing them into history so thoroughly that no one outside would ever prove they'd existed. It wasn't just looping time, it was erasing reality and archiving the residue. The hum quieted, the air thickened like concrete. I felt my lungs slow, my pulse stretch. Through the doorway I saw daylight again, or something that pretended to be it. The world beyond was clean, bright, silent. No vehicles, no fog, just the forest. untouched. For the first time since it began, I understood the purpose. Lifeline wasn't about communication through time. It was about containment, holding an anomaly that was never meant to be shut off, sealing it inside its own moment so it couldn't bleed into ours. The soldiers, the teams, the echoes, we were the containment field. I looked down at my hand, now transparent, the edges flickering like a dying signal. The hum dropped an octave, slower, deeper, and for the first time I could hear words within it. Thank you for your service. Then the lights dimmed, and the numbers froze for good. 0, 2, 37, 16. The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere above me in the waking world, I imagined new boots on the same dirt, new voices over the same channel, asking the same question I once did. Command, this is Bravo 47. We're checking an anomaly out by white line access. And I knew the machine would stir again, because that's what memory does. It replays until someone stops listening. But no one ever will, because by the time they reach this place, they'll already be part of it. If you've made it this far, remember this. Some places aren't lost because we forgot them. They're lost because something down there wants it that way. White Line wasn't a base, or a project, or a rumor. It was a wound in time that never healed, and every man who walked into it became part of the scar. So if you ever find yourself driving the back roads of eastern Kentucky and your compass starts to spin, don't stop. Don't look for the towers. Don't listen for the hum, because once you hear it, it already knows your name. This is Captain Rebel, signing off from another classified field account. Stay sharp out there, keep your lights low, and remember, some transmissions were never meant to be received. Subscribe, like, and share, because the next story might be the one they didn't manage to erase.